Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Raccoon and Apple Barrel, and I'm going to be sipping on my coffee. And if you enjoy this process, I hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, burnt umber, which I'll call brown, burnt sienna, which I'll call rust, fire red, deep yellow, green oxide, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like to, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil that I'll use for some drawing, and then I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, I have a number 10 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 2 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same kind of paint and the pencil and all the good stuff. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be drawing ourselves a basic outline for our barrel and our apples and our little raccoon. I'm going to be using my pencil, and I'm going to guide you into various shapes, so it'll be no details. We're just going for some real basic shapes, so we have these sections that we can put a base coat or block in with our background color for the sections. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to put my barrel in shape, and we'll build things off of that. So on the left hand side, I'm going to come down about 3 inches from the top of my canvas, make myself a little bit of a marker in through here. Then I'm coming all the way down to the bottom of my canvas and coming up about 2 inches, making myself a little bit of a marker. I'm going to come over to the right from this one to about halfway, almost halfway into my canvas, maybe a little give or take, a little more or a little less, but somewhere in this vicinity is my next marker. And then I'm going to come all the way up to the top of my canvas. I'm going to come over to the right from here to about here. So if this is about center of my canvas, I'm over to the left maybe about 3 inches and down about 1 inch right around here. So just to give you a visual, you're higher or taller than this one by about 2 inches and maybe about 1 inch or so down from the top of your canvas, somewhere in through there. What I'm doing in essence is I'm giving you the back end of your barrel, and then we're going to make pointers for the top and the bottom and the width of the oval type opening for it. So then I'm going to come down about halfway from top to bottom in my canvas, and I'm going to go over to the right just a little bit, maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch, somewhere in through there. And then I'm going to go about halfway between here and the edge of my canvas at the same height and make myself another marker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this dot to here with a diagonal line. You can give it a little bit of a curve if you want to. If you want your barrel to look like it's got a little bit of roundness to it, you can certainly do that, or just do it with a straight diagonal line. And then I'm going to connect these two down at the bottom. Same thing. This bottom is going to get kind of hidden with grass, so don't feel the need to make that perfect. And then I'm going to connect this dot to this dot to this dot with an arcing motion. So this is going to be the outside edge of my barrel. So something like this will give me my exterior shape to it. And then on this bottom portion here, I'm just going to kick this up, like continue my arcing motion for about an inch or so, maybe 2 inches if you want to get wild and crazy. And then I'm going to connect this marker to here. So this whole area in through here is going to be filled with apples. So I'm not going to bring this line all the way down to here, but when I connect to here, I want to keep that oval type of shape. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to give myself that oval type of shape at the top. So something like this. So I am bringing it out to the right a little bit, and if you feel like you need to make this a little bit rounder at the top, feel free to do so, because you don't want it to look like a point at the top. So you might want to manipulate it a little bit. The beautiful part about pencil is we get to keep adjusting as we see fit. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a whole bunch of circular shapes for my apples. You can really have as many apples as you want. I want these to look like they're really big and they're going to be juicy and vibrant and have a lot of life to them. So I'm going to make them pretty darn big. I'm going to start them way over here on the right hand side of my canvas. So if you travel from the bottom of your barrel all the way over to the right and go up maybe about an inch, inch and a half, and maybe in about an inch, inch and a half, that's about the farthest over I'm putting that right hand apple. And then what I can do from here is I'm just going to start making myself a whole bunch of circular style shapes. They don't all have to be perfect circles. If you get them to be a little bit awkward or uneven looking, that's going to make them look a little bit more natural. You want them to be different sizes, so that way, again, they take on that more natural type of shape. I'm not really bringing them all the way down to the bottom of my canvas, but I am making them pretty darn big, so that way, again, I've got some good size to my apples. I'm bringing this one in through here, and of course, you can, if you make one a size you don't want, you use your eraser and you just kind of adjust it the way that you want. I'm kind of doing my front ones first and then working my way back, so that way I can just kind of use those front ones as the base and then just put parts of ones behind them. So I'm going to have one in through here. I'm going to say this one's going to come up a little bit higher than this one maybe. And this, again, you don't have to put yours exactly where mine are. They can touch, they can have spaces between them. I'll show you how to manipulate and to get them to look nice and natural when we put the colors on them. But you can see right now, just kind of building some shapes. I think I'm going to have one in through here. This one's going to come all the way maybe up to where my barrel ends in through here. Bring this one maybe over in this direction. Maybe I'll have one coming in through here. So, again, get them to be whatever kind of shapes you want. I've got some that are partial over here, so that way they're looking as if they're, just kind of spilling out of the barrel. But you could certainly have little tiny crab apples if you wanted to. You could have bigger juicy apples like I have. So it's really going to be maybe what style apple that is your favorite. Maybe you're going to do some red delicious apples or some Granny Smith apples, whatever ones are your pleasure. And then I'm going to just kind of do this last one over in through here. And that's about as many apples as I'm doing. You could certainly have more if you want to. And then I'm going to build my little raccoon behind it. So my raccoon's just going to be kind of popping his little face out. So I'm going to go about halfway between here and the top of my my barrel. So right about in through here, this is going to be the left side of his face, and then I'm going to bring the right side of the face over in through here. I'm just going to give myself a arcing kind of line, something like this. And then I'm going to do a little slivers of some ears. So I'm going to have a little ear coming in through here. Something like that. They have these cute little pointy ears, so that's going to be where that one goes. And then I'm going to have this one somewhere in this vicinity. So they're kind of pointy with a little bit of roundness to them. So you can have fun with steering your ears in whatever direction you want, but I think this is going to be, maybe this needs to be a little bit wider on this one. Yeah, we'll bring this one about like this. And then make any adjustments you feel are necessary. We're going to be using our large brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we're going to be painting our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are black and green. And I'm really just looking for this to look like it's out of focus, maybe a forest. I'm also going to use these colors as the base coat for my grass down at the bottom. So I'm going to start with some black paint on my brush. I'm going to be applying my paint in a circular type of motion until I get right next to my outline. Then I can skirt it whatever way I need to, left to right or whatever. Then I'm going to pick up some green paint, and I'm going to be alternating these two colors throughout the entire background. So one time I'll pick up green, next time I'll pick up black. I don't necessarily want it to look like stripes of colors. I'm more or less looking for it to look like an out of focus background. So what you can do, like I just picked up some black right now, I can do a section with black paint, and then I can pick up green, and I can do a section with green paint, and then just get them to kind of overlap each other. And what'll happen is, because I'm not washing my brush, I will end up with varying shades of green, dark green, as well as black. So what'll happen is it will end up looking like it's just an out of focus type of forest behind our little cute raccoon and our bushel or barrel of apples. And I'm just going to kind of continue this throughout the entire background, slowing down a little bit as I'm nearing my outline. And if you bump into your outline a little bit, don't worry about it, because it's going to you're going to be painting that anyways. What you don't want to do is leave too much vacant space or unpainted space between your outline and your background. So if you need to, it's safer kind of to bump into your background than it is to leave unpainted canvas. And you might find that you want to do one or two layers on this. The black really covers very well, but if you want to have a smoother kind of look to it, you might find that you want to do multiple layers on it. So you do one layer, you let it dry, then you can come back and add another layer to it. So that's going to be a visual preference to you. I know that because I'm using this bristle type of brush, I do end up with visible brush marks, which I kind of like, but some people like to have that smoother background. So again, that's going to be a visual judgment call on your part. And then again, when I get towards these apples or towards my outline, I do slow down a little bit, just making sure that I get my paint right up to them, making sure that I'm not missing any spots. And I am consciously trying to not over blend my paint because I do want to have these various tones of the green and the black. So if I was to sit here with a ton of paint on my brush and continue to swirl it around on my canvas in the same area, I would end up with just one kind of soft, solid, blended color. And I would like to have the various tones in here, so I try not to overblend it. But if you come to a point where you're like, oh my god, everything just looks like it's the same color, that could be a sign that you're either overblending or that your brush might be overloaded with both of those colors, and they just seem to be coming out as one solid color. And conversely, if the black can sometimes take over and be way more powerful than the green. So if you are going along and you're painting and you're like, oh my god, everything's just coming out black, that means that your ratio of black to green on your brush, that the black is just overpowering and taking over. So you may want to wash your brush just to get some of that black off and just kind of start clean with a clean brush. And then we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, Actually, let's use our medium brush. We're going to use our medium brush for the next step. Once you've got this done, you can, if you want to, do another layer or just let it sit and go with it as it is. But once you've got it done, you can put your large brush away wherever you'd like to. Take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat for our raccoon. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm using are black, brown, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself just a medium gray color. I'll be using that as the base. It'll help us build our raccoon in a nice, easy fashion. So I'm just going to take a little bit of black, a little bit of brown, maybe equal parts of brown and black, and then a little bit of white, and just make myself a medium kind of gray. I think I need a little more white in here. I do know that my gray will get a little bit darker as it dries, so I'm just kind of planning for that as I'm creating my mixture, and that's looking pretty good to me. So maybe a little bit more white. So once you've got your gray that you like, you can, all we're going to be doing is we're painting in this little guy. You don't even need to worry about any specific brush stroke. I just really want to get a base coat on him in order for us to be able to build the fur and the features from there. So I typically, when I'm doing animals, will do just a solid base coat to start that fur process. So this is the color that is most dominant in this little creature, so I am just going for this as my base coat. It just makes my process easier, and we're not necessarily going for photorealism here. We're just going for a fun, cute, autumnal type of image that will make us want to go out and pick some apples and not be worried if there's a little raccoon hanging behind. And I'm just going all the way to the edge. If you bump into your your background a little bit, that's okay. We're going to be putting little bits of fur and stuff all along the edges of these ears and head anyways. You just want to make sure that you bring this all the way to the outline of your barrel, so that way you don't have any unpainted area between your barrel and your little raccoon here. And then we're going to use our large brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the main areas on our barrel. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are brown, black, rust, yellow, and white. So the only colors I'm not using are green and red. So how I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to do the inside part of the barrel really nice and dark. It'll be like black in through here, and then it's going to come out into like a brown rusty color. I'll shoot a little bit of color, dark color down in through here. But I want the inside of the barrel to be dark and then the outside to be lighter. And I'm going for like a wood type of look. So I will continually be using my brush in a kind of a striping type of brush stroke, especially when I come to this area in through here. When I do this area in through here, I will be making it lighter, and I'm going to be just kind of applying my paint in this striping type of technique. The top will be lighter than the bottom to add a little bit of shadow, and we will be doing final details later. Like we'll put an edge around the barrel later. We're going to put a little metal strap around it too. So if it's not perfect around your edges at this point, don't worry about it. So I'm going to start with a little bit of black and rust on my brush at the same time. Not much, just a little bit. I want this area in through here to be nice and dark, so I'm just putting a little bit of the black and the rust. Then what I'm going to do, just bringing it around this corner just a little bit, I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. So I still have a tiny bit of black on there. I'm going to pick up rust and brown, and this is where I'm just going to kind of pull out these colors in this direction. So it's going to end up getting a little bit lighter as it goes to that right hand side. So it looks like it's kind of emerging from out of the depths of the apple barrel. And you can bring it right up to your apple. It's okay if you bump into it. That's the intent here. We're going to paint the apples on top later, so don't worry if you bump into them. I got to put a little bit down in this corner, down in through here, so just rust and brown are on my brush right now, and just pulling this in a similar direction. If you will be putting shadow on our apples later and stuff, so if it's not totally as dimensional as you want it at this point, no worries, we'll add those later. Gonna get a little bit in through this crevice here, and again, if you have the space to give yourself a directional brush stroke, excellent, but if it just looks brown in there, that's okay too. Putting a little bit of rust on my brush now, just to make it a little bit lighter as it's coming over towards this right hand side, and then just gonna get these two to intermingle a little bit. So I'm just going for a nice rich kind of look to the inside of my barrel, getting it darker in this area and fading out to a lighter color. And then what I'm going to do, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm going to start working on the exterior of my barrel. You can certainly leave a little unpainted area around the edge, because again, we're going to be doing that detail work later. So I didn't wash my brush. I'm picking up a little bit of rust, brown, and black on my brush. Not much, but enough for me to get some darker kind of streaks going throughout my barrel, something like this. These darker streaks are going to end up looking like the little crevices between the pieces of wood. So you can really make them nice and distinct, or you can make them on the lighter version. It's going to be, again, one of those visual preferences on your part. So once I've got those kind of darker streaks in here, you can certainly work on it as much as you want to give the evidence of those, you know, little crevices. Then I'm going to start, without washing my brush, I'm going to be picking up rust, yellow, and white, and maybe some brown too. This is going to give me the lighter wood version around the top. You could pre-mix yourself a color, but I like to kind of, when I'm doing multi-toned objects like this, I like to mix it on my canvas. So didn't wash my brush. I'm going to pick up a little bit of rust, a touch of yellow, and a little bit of white. And I'm just going to start to intermingle these colors throughout the entire barrel. So you can have it lighter or darker. I'm going to use a little bit more paint at this point so I can get some longer strokes on in through here. But your barrel can end up any color you want. It can be, I just picked up some more rust. You can make it really, you know, having that newer wood look, which would have a lot of those rusty tones to it, or if you want it to look like it's a really nice and old and aged barrel, if you make it look a little bit more on the grayer side, that's going to speak to it being older and having that weathered gray type of look to it. So that's going to be, again, something that, you know, let it dry, step back from it. If you want to keep adding additional colors and feel to it, you're more than welcome to do so. I like to kind of build these type of objects in layers. So once I get done doing this, I will probably let it sit for a minute and then see if it in fact is as light or as dark or as tan as I want it to be, and then I'll probably, you know, fiddle with it a little bit to make sure that it has the colors that I want it to have, and the brightness or the darkness that I want it to have in these little crevices. And then once you've got your barrel as light or as dark or as wood, you know, looking as you want it to be, we will be switching to our medium brush for the next step, so you can just get your barrel all set. And again, I'm leaving this little bit of an edge over, you know, unpainted, because we're going to be closing that off with a distinct edge in a little bit. So, and again, if you wanted to add more creases in between your wood, you can certainly come back and just add little bits of these extra darker pieces once you've got the whole thing on there. So fiddle with it, have fun with it, enjoy the process, and when you're all set, you can put this large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the base coat of our apples. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using red and yellow paint. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to paint my back apples and work my way forward. I'll be starting with yellow, and then I'm going to move to red. The yellow, I am gonna just sporadically put sections throughout my apples, and then I'll get the red to kind of intermingle with it. So you can really have your apples whatever color you want. They can have different patterns on them. They could just be all red if you want to, but I'm going for an apple, a style of apple that we have these great apple orchards where I live, and they have these big, huge, like honey crisp apples and Gala apples, and they look similar to this. So I'm going for my favorite kinds of apples here. They're sweet, they're crunchy, they're yummy. So that's what we're painting today. So I'm going to start with some yellow paint on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of pick some areas that I want the yellow to be represented, and you can have it on various spots on the apples. You can have it on the whole thing. I will get the red to blend in a minute, but I'm kind of a lazy brush washer. So when I do something like this, I tend to think of how can I not wash my brush a lot. So to me, doing a lot of my yellow areas first is going to allow me to keep up with my I don't want to wash my brush a lot thought process. So I'm just adding some yellow, and I started with the back one, and I'm just kind of working my way forward. You can, that process of going from the back and working your way forward will be more important when we do the red on it, but this helps to just kind of keep your mindset in a kind of a systematic way. And what I'm doing with this yellow is I'm softening the edges, so I'm not having a firm line where that yellow ends. It kind of slowly merges into my white areas. So that way, I think this one I'm gonna have all yellow. I'll have some little red spots, but I'm gonna do the base all yellow on it. So because I'm leaving those edges soft, when I go to blend in some red or introduce red to it, I'll have an easier time allowing those two colors to kind of intermingle with one another. And you can see here that I'm not coloring the whole thing on a lot of them. I'm just saying, oh, I think I want there to be a little bit of a yellowish or orange type of area, in here, and maybe it's gonna work its way into the red over on the other side. This one, I think I'm gonna have a lot of yellow in it. The red will overpower the yellow, so if you have overdone your yellow and you're like, oh my God, I didn't want that much yellow on my apple, don't worry, you'll be able to cover it with the orange. So it will just, that's no problem at all. So I'm going to have a lot on that one. I think I'm going to have a bunch on this one too. So when doing these apples, what's going to be beneficial is when you're nearing another apple, if you want them to really look different from one another, as I get towards adding that red on there, I want them where the two apples meet to look slightly different from one another, to have, maybe this edge is going to be more yellow and that edge is going to be more red. So that way when the viewer is looking at this, they'll be able to see the difference between those two apples. And that can be accomplished with highlights and shadows and things of that nature as well, but through this base coat process to allow for you as the painter to also have an easier time leaving those edges separate will work out. Plus, your pencil will probably show through a little bit too. So now that I've got the yellow areas, I'm going to start picking up red. And when I didn't wash my brush. When I introduce this red to the specific apple, I can also utilize yellow as well. So don't feel that you can, once you get into that red, you're relegated to just using that red. What I can do is put some red on there, wipe my brush off on my paper towel, pick up some yellow, and start intermingling those two sections together. So that's how you're going to get them to really look like they belong together, is by utilizing perhaps both of those colors on your brush. But again, be careful, because the red will take over. It will overpower the yellow. So if you have to, just be limited with the quantity of red as you're nearing those yellow sections. And again, you don't have to paint it in 100% at this point, because we are going to do those highlights and shadows on it in a little bit. But when I'm adding this red, I am also thinking, for me, when I look at this style of apple, I often kind of feel the pattern is almost like in a striped kind of way, which might not be terribly accurate, but I tend to move my brush in a kind of a circular or a striped kind of way to get these colors to blend in with one another. But that's just what I see in my head. It might, again, not be totally accurate, but when you get to these, the blending of the two sections, I just, find myself moving my brush in kind of that striped type of up and down motion where it's in the direction of the outside of the apple. And that will also tell the viewer that the apple is in fact kind of round too. So you can utilize those cues, those visual cues, to tell the viewer what shape that object is. So I am right now just kind of going back and forth with my red and my yellow, kind of on each apple, just kind of placing that red on there and then slowly working it into my yellow section. And I'm very frequently wiping my brush off on my paper towel, get that red on there, pick up some of the yellow while I still maybe have a little bit of the dirty red on my brush, and just getting those sections to intermingle with one another. The intermingling with each other is what's going to make it look really nice and natural. And if you end up having your red carry over into an area that you weren't really expecting, that's all right. That, just let it happen. There's no specific pattern that you need to follow when it comes to painting an apple. You can certainly have, whatever, pattern that you want. So I wiped my brush off on my paper towel, and now I'm going in for some red on this one. And I just repeat this process throughout the entire apple painting process, just making sure that I'm covering them pretty well. You don't, again, need to cover it 100%, but I am definitely making a concerted effort to have some kind of color represented on the entire apple before I, move on to my next step, and just making sure that I've got these colors speaking to one another, so that it doesn't look like I just have line, like I wouldn't leave this line up here. I want it to blend in with my yellow. So I just picked up some yellow without washing my brush. So I'm going to get some beautiful orange kind of colors coming in through here, and maybe I'll have even a little red section in through here. So just, play with it as much as you want to, and get that to be as red as you want it, or as, it represent those little yellow areas as much as you want. This just kind of naturally made my my top of my apple. That'll be fun to work with later. So feel free to, utilize that. I'm going to pick up a little bit more yellow because I have a couple of bald spots on this apple that I want to make sure that I color in all the way. And you might find that you want to do a couple of layers. I mean, apples can be speckled, they can have little divots and dark spots on them, which we'll attend to when we do our highlights and shadows. But right now, just kind of, giving some natural color in here. I think I'm going to have this one with a little bit, I liked what happened here, so I'm going to kind of emulate that up in through here, maybe give myself the top of the apple like that, and then just kind of work this red off into blending into that yellow. So just pulling it out a little bit. I wiped my brush off and then picked up a little bit of yellow, and just getting this to blend in, bringing it all the way out to my the edge of my outline. And if you can still see your outline at this point, don't worry about it, because again, those are going to be taken care of when we do the final details on these fruit, when we do the shadows and highlights and stuff. So I'm going to pick up some red here, and you can see I'm working my way forward. This is how I like to approach it, because it makes doing my edges nice and simple for me. But you might find a different approach works for your process. And there is, there's not, when it comes to art making, there's really no right or wrong. It's really what's working for you and how you can convey your you know, your message or what you're looking to present to the viewer. How can you accomplish that and get it on the canvas in a way that works for you. I just wiped my brush off, picked up some yellow. I'm going to work this wet red. Again, I liked those top openings, so I think I'm going to kind of emulate that again in through here, and then just get this to work its way in through the rest of my apple. And you can see how I'm leaving a lot of that yellow to be evident, but I'm working it right into the red, so that way it doesn't look like, you know, we just painted a solid yellow section. I want these to really look like they just, you know, grew together and they belong on the same apple, and so that's how I'm approaching it. Wiped my brush off, picking up some red to get this section in through here, and I don't want to confuse myself with these two right here, so I'm not going to bring this red all the way or get it that dark at the edge, but I do want a lot of red down in through here, and then maybe I'll pull some up into this top piece. I got hooked on that up there, so now I'm just going to do it everywhere. But it's provided me with this great way to tell the viewer where, you know, where the stem is going to be coming out of. I just wiped my brush off, picked up some yellow, and I'm starting to merge these colors together, maybe bring this up a little bit in through here. And again, if it's too red for you, I just actually washed my brush and dried it on my paper towel and picked up some more of my yellow just to make sure that I can get these to do what I want them to, bringing this this red section up a little bit higher, but trying not to confuse myself with this corner over here, so making it more as if it's maybe orange or something over and through there. And then I just have my one little guy over on the right hand side, but let me just kind of bring this down a little bit in through here, and you can certainly, you know, just keep playing with it, keep having fun with it. We'll add more detail to it when we do our highlights and our shadows, but you can see as I'm going through this process, it's, you know, each apple has its own identity. So I just picked up some red paint, and I'm going to add some in through here. I don't want this apple to all be red, so I'm just going to add little bits here and there, and then I'm going to wipe my brush off, pick up some yellow. So, you know, again, I'm pretty much alternating my red and yellow at this point to get this base coat of my apples on here, and I'm trying not to make them all red. I'm trying to have that yellowy or orangey type of color represented. Maybe tell myself I'm going to have that center in through there, and again, just reloading my brush with some yellow so I can get these colors to blend in with one another. And I'm using a thin-bodied student grade paint, so my paint stays a little moist for a while, so that makes this blending process a little easier for me. If your paint is a little bit thicker and you're finding that this blending process, your paint dries on you too fast, you could certainly use a little liquid medium, or you could use a little bit more paint on your brush, or a touch of water, but the water will make it look a little bit too translucent perhaps on this on these colors. So you know, more layers, you can do another layer if you wanted to, but that's going to be all I'm going to do for the base coat of my apples. I'm going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our barrel. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and the colors I'm going to use are the gray that we created for our raccoon, and then some of my barrel colors. So probably black, white, brown, rust, maybe a little yellow too, but I'll call them out as I use them. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create what's going to be the strap, the metal strap around the barrel. So I'm going to be using that gray paint to create this, and I'm going to make mine about half the distance between the edge of my barrel and the edge of my canvas. So maybe about, you know, just about half the distance between there. And I'm going to give it a similar curve as the outside edge of my barrel in through there. So I'm just going to take this and take my gray paint and just kind of watch that, that curve and give myself a pretty wide, I'm going to go for maybe about a 1/2 inch wide kind of stripe that's got this a similar curve to my rim of my barrel. And of course you could have yours a different color. I'm just going for an old, maybe galvanized kind of metal look to mine, but you could certainly make yours into whatever style of strap that you want. Or maybe you don't have a strap. Maybe you ended up with a square, you know, wooden container for your apples. It's, you know, it's all right. It can be whatever you'd like it to be. And then once I've got that on there, I'm going to create the little handle part. So this I'm going to have about halfway from here to here, so somewhere in here. And I'm just going for, again, something that is representational of what I typically kind of see on these barrels. It's just going to be this little metal piece. We'll have a little handle on it in a minute. I'm just going to color this in. It can be round. Mine's going to be a little shaped, awkwardly shaped like this. You can, again, have yours shaped whatever way that you would like. Once I've got this shape on here, I'm keeping it a little bit away from my strap. And then what I'm going to do is, and of course I'm looking at it from the side, so I'm trying to have it correct proportions as if it was, you know, you're looking at it from the side. And then once I've got this on here, and I can do any little adjustments that I want, I'm going to put the handle that's going to hang. So I'm going to have my handle comes through this metal piece here and is going to come out these sides in through here. So I'm just going to bring this kind of like this, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. So up here a little bit, and then just kind of bringing it out a little bit like this with a little bit of a curve, and then I'll just get these two to meet like this, and we'll put detail on it in a second. But while this is drying, I'm going to go ahead and finish the rim on my barrel. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have it a little bit darker on this side and then a little lighter on there. So I'm going to start with just brown and maybe a little bit of white. So brown plus a little bit of white, and I'm really just going to give myself an edge to my barrel like this that looks a little different than the side itself. So as I travel down here, maybe I pick up brown with a little bit of black on my brush so I can get a nice edge that is evident down in through here. So again, this is going to be one of those things where you're going about it and you're like, well, maybe I can't see it as well as I want to. So if that's the case, you just need a little bit more contrast. So if you need to make it a little bit darker as it's going down towards the bottom, on the right hand side of the barrel, I'll be making it lighter. So it's going to make it look like it's got, you know, it's being hit by some kind of light source. So that looks pretty good. And then over on my right hand side, I think I'm going to pick up maybe rust brown, yellow, and a little bit of white just to kind of transition this little tippy top part over and through here. And then with my dirty brush, I just picked up some white, so it's going to transition to a lighter color over on this right hand side, which again will just kind of speak to the, you know, all the stuff that's around in the atmosphere. So it's going to make it lighter if it's tipped more towards the sun on that side. And then I'll just get these two to kind of transition into one another up in through here, and I would just keep fiddling with that. If I needed to do anything more to my edges, I certainly would go ahead and do that, but I'm thinking this is looking pretty good. So I'm going to just wash and dry my brush and put my little details on my strap. So all I need to do is do a little highlight and shadow on my strap. I'm going to start with my shadow. I'm putting a little bit of black paint on my brush. I want there to be a little hole in through here, so I'm going to just put, or a little nut or something, so I just put a little bit of black in through here. I'm going to put a black line to be my shadow over here on the right hand side. You could certainly utilize a smaller brush, but I'm going to just use this one to go about. When I get to this handle part, I'm going to bump it up a little bit to make it look like that handle is coming out of it instead of just stuck on the side of it. And then I'm going to put a little bit of shadow coming down in through here like this. I'm going to put a shadow coming on the bottom side of my handle in through here. So just taking a little bit of black, and it's just going to lay right on top of my strap that's going around my barrel. Going to bring this shadow up this left hand side a little bit. So right now just have a little bit of black on my brush. I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom side of this piece in through here. So I'm trying not to get my hand in wet paint, but I'm sure it's going to happen sooner or later. So a little bit of black on through there, and then I'm going to go ahead and on the left hand side of the strap itself give myself a little bit of a shadow. So just a little bit of black paint is what I'm doing here to provide the illusion that this might be a little three-dimensional. I'm going to wash and dry my brush now, and I'm going to put a little highlight. So I'm just going to use white. You could use white with your gray if you wanted to. My paint's probably still wet a little bit underneath, so that'll help me to pull down these highlights. That'll make them look nice and natural. I'm going to put a little bit in through here. This is going to make this little piece look like it pops out a little bit there. Maybe a little gray and white to add a little bit of a highlight in through the top portion of that. And again, I'm just going for something really representational. If you wanted yours to look like a photograph, you could certainly spend a little bit more time and attention on it, but I'm just adding these little bits of highlights and shadows to tell the story of it having a dimensional kind of element to it. And then I think I'm going to put a little bit down in through here, and then maybe a little bit in through here too. And then that's all I'm going to be doing for my barrel. We're going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your barrel all nice and completed, you can put this medium brush away. I need a little highlight here. Put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint ourselves a little nose and some eyes. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using black, white, and that gray color that we created. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to put my nose and my eyes in place, and then we're going to work the little details around them. So I've got my inside part of my eyes are going to be coming, you want to come in a little bit from each ear, maybe about a half of an inch to an inch, and then kind of down to right about in through here. So I'm going to just make myself a couple little markers. That's going to be about the kind of upward, inward corner of the eyes. And then the top of my nose, I'm going to, if you were to do maybe like an inch triangle in through here, my top of my nose is going to be right about there. So I'm going to put my nose on first. So my nose is just going to be this cute little button kind of nose somewhere. I'm going to leave a little space between my apple and the bottom of my nose, like this. Kind of bringing this out, maybe about an inch at its farthest part out, and just kind of making this little circular type shape that's just kind of peeking out the side of the barrel itself. So it doesn't have to be the full circle. I'm having mine peeking out the side. And then I'm going to have my eyes. I'm going to have them a little bit away from these corners, because this to me is going to be some of the hair that's going to be surrounding, or the mask part. So I'm going to go a little bit to the right of this one, make myself a marker that's like a little bit, a circle that's about the size of a pea. So something like this, maybe. That looks pretty good to me, somewhere around that. And I'm going to do the same thing on the left hand side. So I'm going to go a touch to the left of my marker, make myself a little eye that's about the size of a pea, something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to work the mask part around these markers. So I have black on my brush. I'm going to pick up some of my gray as well. So I have black and gray, and I'm going to put underneath this mouth, or underneath the nose, I'm bringing these little bits of dark gray pieces. So I have black plus the original gray. So this is giving me these little pieces of what are going to be seemingly dark fur on the animal. I'm bringing it all the way to my apple. I just brought this little section in through here, and I'm going to do the same thing around the eyes, which is going to give me the mask around the eye. So right now I've got my marker here. I'm going to come in just a little bit like this, do the same thing on this side, bring it a little bit like this, and then give myself a little bit of a curved line that's going to come around what would be the muzzle on the little raccoon, like this. And then I'm going to do the same thing over on the top side. I'm going to come about maybe half of an inch to an inch away from my edge of my head in through here, so maybe somewhere around here, just kind of giving myself a little area where my mask is going to go, so something like that. And then same thing over here, just bring this up just a little bit, and then just over here. And I'm going to paint with black and my gray. I'm painting these little pieces of hair around my eyes. So this is going to end up being the mask portion of your, I said hair, I guess it's fur on a raccoon. My mask portion on the little animal here, and just bringing it so it looks like it's scooting behind there, and then same thing over on this side. So I'm keeping it dark like this with the black and the gray, so it looks like it's a black kind of mask, but we're allowing for it to not just be black. We want it to have a little bit of dimension to it, so that's why I'm using the black with the gray on my brush at the same time to create that element of dimension to it, and also so we have the eye itself kind of stick out as its own element. And then once I've got these little pieces on here, I'm going to wash and dry my brush so I can create the little bits on the nose and in the eyes. So I washed and dried my brush. So for my nose, I'm going to have a little flat spot on the top. So I'm putting just a little bit of my gray on there. I'm going to create this little flat spot on the top like this, and then get it to just fade back to the top part of the nose. I have a couple of little nostrils, so I'm going to bring these little curved lines in through here and in through here, and then maybe a little bit in the center. And then I'm picking up a tiny bit of white paint without washing my brush to give myself a bit of a highlight on the tip of that nose, something like that. And if you wanted to, if you felt you wanted a little more dramatic entrance into the nostrils, you can certainly pull that little bit of white in through there. I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel, pick up a little bit of white. I'm going to go in for the eyes. So the eyes, I'm going to have a little bit of white in the bottom of them, which will give me that little curiosity kind of eyelid down at the bottom, or the white of the eye, maybe a little bit over on this side as well. And then I'm just going to put a little twinkle in the eye, a little bit of white up at the top, and maybe pull it down a little bit. So I'll do the same thing, give the other eye a similar twinkle. And then if you have any little adjusting that you want to do after that, you're more than welcome to do so. We're going to utilize our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this part of your beautiful little raccoon done, you can put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the fur on our raccoon. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to be using gray, black, brown, and white. And how I'm going to approach this is I'm going to approach it from the dark fur and work my way to the light. So for me, obviously we already put the mask in place, but if you have any tweaking, you can certainly do that. But for the rest of the fur, my dark fur is going to happen inside my ears, around maybe the top of my head, maybe a little bit on the bridge of the nose, and then I'm going to work my way towards the light. So we do have white areas on the raccoon, which will be the tips of the ears, a little bit around we'll call them the raccoon eyebrows, and then the bridge of the nose. But the rest of the head has lots of gray in it, so I'm going to build it from the dark to the light, and if I have to overlap and stuff like that, I certainly will. So I'm going to start in my ears. I'm going to put a little bit of black plus my gray on my brush at the same time. And when I do this entire process, I'm going to be using directional brush strokes, which is going to tell the viewer the direction that that hair or fur is growing in. So inside these ears, there's pretty long fur or hair. So as I'm doing this, I don't want to overpaint it. I want to allow for some of that that gray to show through. I'm going to do the same thing over on this ear. So going from the inside, just kind of pulling some of this fur out, nearing the edge of the ears. I'm going to, while I still have that color combination on my brush, and it seems to be working out pretty well, I'm going to put some of this darker fur on this forehead, maybe inside the bridge of the nose in through here. And I really don't have much paint on my brush right now. I'm kind of just utilizing the remnants. I'm going to stick a little bit of brown paint on my brush without washing it, because I'd like to have a little bit of the brown represented in these ears as well, just to give it a little bit of more of a natural kind of tone that I like to see in my paintings. A little bit of the browns coming up on the top of the forehead, maybe a little bit in the bridge of the nose in through here. And again, I didn't wash my brush yet, just kind of adding these bits of color onto here. Now I'm not washing my brush, I'm just going to pick up more of that gray color. So it's going to naturally get lighter and lighter because I have not picked up any more brown. And I'm going to add more of that kind of an additional layer of the brown, or the grayish brown, kind of coming towards the exterior of the head, something like this. And again, just kind of adding these little bits of pieces of fur. So I'm working my way towards the lightness of the fur. I think I'm going to put a couple of these gray pieces sticking out the top of the head. So I just put a little bit more gray on my brush to get some of these pieces to come out the top of the head, so the head doesn't look too flat. So I'm utilizing the lighter color, and if you want, you can, pick up some black too. This is just something that I want to do so I can have some texture on that top of that head. And then what I'm going to do, I'm not going to wash my brush, I'm wiping it off on my paper towel, and I'm going to start picking up white paint with my limited dirty brush. I'm going to start building the lighter areas on this muzzle. So I've got some in through here. I'm using mostly right now a dotting type of technique right along this nose, because I know that this is going to be a little bit shorter fur in through here, and I know that it will end up building its way to the lightness that I desire. But right now, just kind of polka dotting. And of course, you could utilize your small brush. We're going to use the small brush in a little while to put the whiskers on, but right now I'm just kind of getting the fur on, so I know where my colored sections are and if I need to add anything additional. So I know that they've got these cute little white or lighter areas for the eyebrow area, is what, I don't know if that's technically the right terminology, but that's what I'm going to call it. So I'm putting that on here, and then of course I'm using my directional kind of brush stroke to give these little fluffy pieces above the eye. I've got this section wider as it's nearing the inside of the eye, so, and it kind of maybe comes out a little bit further in through here. And again, I'm trying not to overdo it. If you do come to a point where you're like, oh my god, I just totally painted over all of that other fur that I had on there, well, then you just bring back some of that other color. So if I feel that I want to add more to, this area, I can certainly just kind of come in and just keep tapping in some additional layers of the fur until I feel like it's developed into what I want it to. I want to have a little more dimension on the top of the head, so I just picked up a touch of black, and I can keep just kind of adding these little bits of information. But I do want to add some lightness to my ears too. So before I stray too far on making more fur, I'm gonna go ahead and add the lightness to the tips of the ears. So I'm gonna utilize mostly white for that again. So I know that I want the brightest of the bright part to be at the tippy edges. So I'm gonna just kind of tap in some white paint along those edges, and then in order for it to kind of blend in with its neighboring area, you can certainly just pull little streaks going in towards the inside of the ear. I think I might make that ear a little bit darker on the inside, but you know, the beautiful part about doing something like this is you get to explore, you know, what you like and what you don't like. If you want yours to be really nice and dimensional, you might go through the process. Even though I built it from dark to light, I might have to go back into that section if I feel that I didn't get enough dimension on it. If I feel I want it to be a little bit darker in there and have a little bit more fullness to it, I may have to, you know, revisit that and add a little bit more to get it to the way that I visually want to see it. So, you know, I have my process that works well for me, but you know, there's no foolproof method. So you may find you too want to, you know, go back to other areas, and that's where, you know, doing touch-ups and fiddling with it is helps us to finish the piece. So again, like right now, I just picked up some of my gray and white, and I might fiddle with this a little bit more on the tip of the ear, and then the pieces are in place, so I just kind of keep fiddling. And you can do the same thing with your painting, and when you feel that you've got your little raccoon as cute as you want them to appear, then you can just call it. And then we are going to utilize this same brush, your medium brush, for the next step. So once you've got him as cute as you want, keep amping up this little white section above these eyes. That helps to bring out his cuteness too. Once you've got this all done, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting our shadows on the apples. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are brown, black, red, and yellow. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to never be using a lot of paint. I'm really just looking to make sure I have some sort of dimension from the flat part of the apple to where it rounds, so it can give the viewer that information, as well as any areas within or that are between each apple that might really have a nice deep shadow. And I also want to have some shadows that are going inside the barrel. So again, this is going to be one of those processes that I work from the back and kind of just work my way forward. I also will be putting seemingly little shadows within some of the tops of the apples, just to give them a little bit of dimension. So I'm going to start kind of over in this vicinity, because I know this is probably where I want to add the most amount of shadows. So I'm going to use my medium brush. I'm picking up a touch of black and brown, and I don't need a lot, so I actually wiped it off on my paper towel. I know that I want to have some deep shadow over here, as well as in between these couple of apples and through here. So I'm going to add a little bit of this dark paint right in between them, giving you the illusion that this one on top is really kind of casting a shadow on this one underneath, or you know, it's going in deep and we're just seeing the deep dark shadow from inside. I want to have some shadow meeting my my barrel, so these apples will look like they are in fact kind of coming out, you know, and they're partially in the barrel a bit. So again, just black and brown on my brush right now. I will be adding a bit of red in a minute, but right now just kind of rubbing this on here. You can add a little bit of water to your brush as well, just to so you can have that fluidity or a little bit of liquid medium, so you can get these colors to just kind of blend and work their way in. This is the time also where as I'm getting towards the edges of these apples, If I need to do any more work on the barrel behind them, that's where I would definitely make sure that I introduce a shadow or make sure that it is fully rendered in that area. So I'm going to, I know I said I was working from the back forward, but I guess I'm working from the left to the right. But I want to work on this one next, so I'm putting my, again, using a little bit of black and brown for these nice deep dark shadows, making sure that I have all the little crevices all nice and filled in. When doing something like this, if you're looking to have that dimensional element to it, you just got to watch all those little crevices and make sure that wherever it dips in really nice and far, that's where you want to make sure that that shadow is really apparent. I'm wiping my brush off on my paper towel because I don't want to overwhelm it with black. I just picked up some brown. Brown is a really, or at least the brown I'm using, is nice and translucent, and it's a great color to use as a shadow because you get to see the color of the object underneath it. So I like to utilize it, especially on lighter toned or, you know, lighter areas, so you can see the color underneath it. Using it with water on my brush helps me to make it even more translucent. So I'm just making sure that I close up these edges over in through here. I've got a little bit of water on my brush to allow for that paint to kind of sink into the crevices of my canvas. I'm going to put a little bit in through here. That's going to show where I want the stem of my apple to go, and you can certainly bring a little bit up in through these areas along the side, and I'm just kind of working this shadow into the apple itself. As you work your way more forward in your apples, the process becomes a little bit easier, but just kind of understanding where you want these shadows to go. I think I'm going to pick up a little bit of red paint on my brush. I want this shadow to be here, but I want to introduce that red. The red's going to help you to get it to blend in as well. So just put a little bit of red on my brush to get these the edges to kind of round out. And you don't have to do it on all of the edges. I know that I'm going to have some highlights on some of them, some of these edges, but I want to give the viewer the illusion that they are in fact round. So I think I'm going to work on this one next. I want a little bit of a shadow in through here. So I have hardly any paint on my brush right now with a touch of water. So this is allowing me to get this nice translucent, just a little bit of deepness in this color in through here. I'm going to go ahead and do this area down in through here. So again, the colors on my brush right now are brown and black. I have probably a little bit of red on my brush too from that other apple, plus a little bit of water. And this is just, I'm closing off my areas that go down deep. I am getting it to blend in, making sure that I have all of my edges fully rendered. Again, I'm going to have some highlights in a bit too. I think I want this to go a little bit deeper, darker down in through here. I just picked up a touch of black paint to make sure that I've got this shadow underneath here nice and developed. I think I'm just making that apple a little bit smaller because it looked a little bit too long, and just bringing this darkness, making sure that it is fully developed down below here. And again, I don't need everything to go black. I just want it to look like it is in fact shadowed. So this could be the shadow in the barrel too. Like right now, I'm just kind of making sure that I get all the way around my apples and make sure that they're painted. So I needed to work, you know, put a little bit more work into that barrel because I had some unpainted canvas in through there. So now I'm going to just kind of bring this shadow up this little inside edge of this apple, making sure it kind of still stays red a little bit. Put this shadow now. So that's all I'm going to do for this one. I'm going to go ahead and do this little guy in through here, this back one right here. So I have a little piece of it showing right here. So I'm going to make sure that I have that shadow in there. And I wipe my brush off on my paper towel a lot. again, I'm using paint that's very fluid on my brush. If you have to, again, just dip your brush in your water if you need to, so that way you can work it out and get it to blend out into that particular apple. I'm not sure I said I was going to use yellow, but I'm picking up some yellow because I want my shadow to blend in here. So I just picked up some yellow. I think I did say I was going to, but if I didn't, I am using it now. So just making sure that that shadow blends in. And of course you can utilize this darker color to make more marks on your apples as well, because apples sometimes have a lot of brown markings into them. So if you feel that you want to incorporate some brown marks or anything on your apples, that now's a great time to do that. I'm going to work on this apple right here. So again, not washing my brush, but I am going to pick up a little red and brown on this one because I have a lot of red on the bottom of this apple. So red and brown is where I started here. Maybe a touch of black too down at this little bottom crevice because I like my shadows to be kind of gradual, especially coming out of the darkness out from underneath other apples. So just putting a little bit of extra darkness in through there. And whenever you feel like you want, that fluidity on your brush, just dip your brush a little bit in the water. That's gonna again help you to get that paint to move around without adding more paint on your brush and allowing it to be translucent or transparent, which helps with the shadow process. I think I'm gonna add a little bit more shadowy kind of area in through here, and then just make sure that this blends in well with the rest of the apple. So a little bit of water on my brush helps to achieve that. And then I just have my couple of front ones that I want to do in through here. So again, I'm not washing my brush right now, just kind of using the remnants to put a little bit of a shadowy area up where I'm going to have that stem, and then just making sure I close off my edges. Down at the bottom, I'll be putting some shadow down in through there too. So maybe some brown, maybe a touch of black on this one because it is pretty far down here. So now I'm going to pick up a little bit of red to make sure that I've got this all nice and kind of blended in with the rest of the apple in through here. And again, anytime you feel that you need to wipe your brush off, feel free to do so. And then I just kind of make sure that the shadow just naturally blends in with the rest of the apple. So again, that water on my brush is really going to help allow me to do that. And I'm using right now just the side of my brush to manipulate these little marks, making sure I've got my whole canvas painted around those edges. And then I just have this little guy here. So just using the remnants on my brush, going to put myself a little bit more of a shadowy area up in through here, giving myself that little divot area where I'm going to have my stem in a bit, and then just making sure that I get all of my edges, have enough paint around them, giving myself I think I'm just going to pick up brown for the bottom of this one, and then just pulling some of that brown color up and introducing it to the rest of that apple, and maybe a little more red to introduce in through there, and then just making sure that I have these edges. And of course, again, we're going to be doing the highlights in a minute, so if it's not perfect, don't worry about it. You've got enough little bits of information that we'll be able to put on in a minute. I just added a touch of black too, just to get the bottom of this the way that I want it. And then we're going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your shadows nice and fully rendered, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to add our highlights to our apples. So I do recommend that your apples are dry right now. So if you got done your shadows and they're still a little wet, you can, just get them dry. It'll be an easier process. So I'm going to be using my medium brush again. The colors I'm using are white, yellow, and probably some red too. When doing the highlights, I'm really not going to be doing a whole heck of a lot. My primary thought is I want to add a little bit of a shine to part of the apple to show the roundness of it, and maybe a little reflection of sorts. It doesn't have to be consistent in the same spot on every apple, because these apples are tipped and, you know, they're in various positions, so you can have the shine in different places. I also want to make sure that my apple is fully painted by the time this step is done. So if I do a highlight, I'm going to look at the rest of the apple and say, oh, are my edges done? Or can I still see any pencil underneath there? And I'll make sure that I have the whole thing done. So where I'm going to start right now is I'm going to start with a little bit of yellow and white on my brush and very little bit of both. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of hit each apple with the yellow and the white to make sure that I have everything kind of rendered the way that I want to. The edges are as light as I want them to be, so I just put a little bit of yellow and white on my brush, just making sure that I've got some good edges in through here. And I'm going to start where my highlight is going to go. I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight kind of in through here and maybe in through here, just with that yellow and white, making sure my edge on here is good. You can always add lightness to the edges as well. That helps to kind of sell the story of the apple having shine to it. I just picked up a little bit of yellow because I see some areas in my apple that need a little bit more attention that are not fully painted. So I'm just making sure that I have that whole apple painted. So I'm not going to use red unless I have to at this point, because I really like the yellow kind of look to the apple itself. So that's why I'm starting with just the yellow and the white on each apple, and then if I need to add the red, I will. So I'm going to have maybe a highlighted area in through here, so just putting that yellow and white maybe in through here a bit. And then with that yellow and white, I will make sure that I have the rest of the apple fully painted. So again, I'm using my yellow and white just so I can, if I need to add any softness to the apple or get myself a nice kind of fully rendered color to it, you can utilize that plus a little bit of water and almost give it like a glaze or a soft layer on top of it to kind of unify all of your colors together. I think maybe I do want a little bit of red up at the top of this one just because I'm feeling like I want some. So I just added a little bit of red. So I'm just kind of finalizing, you know, where I want all of these colored sections, and I might amp up that little bit of a highlight in a minute too. But right now, just kind of making sure I've got the apples as fully painted as I want, and I've got that highlight on them. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next one. Again, with my yellow and white on my brush, I'm going to have my, whoops, I need a little more white to get my highlight on here. So I've got that one there. Maybe I'll have a little highlight in through here. And then that yellow and white, not much of it, just a little quantity of it is going to help me to get the rest of that apple fully painted. So after I get this step in essence, or this part of the step done, I will go back, and if there is if I do need to amp up my little highlight, I will. I just added some red because I want a little bit more red in through here. So again, as I'm going through these apples, I'm starting with that yellow and white, figuring out where I want that highlight to go. And then just kind of looking throughout the rest of the apple and saying, do you need to do any more work to it? If I have more, brown I wanted to put on there, I could certainly put on more brown. But right now I'm just kind of, finalizing how I want this to look. I think I want a little more deepness in through here. And if your highlight is not popping out as much as you want it to, you can always add more contrast next to it. So that would be getting it to be lighter or darker next to it. Well, darker since it's a highlight, but that's going to make that highlight pop out even more if you wanted to. Or you can have a little subtle highlight. You know, you don't need it to be this, you know, super white area. I'm going to go ahead and move to this one. I'm putting my highlight area in through here. Again, not using much paint on my brush. Yellow and white, just getting this to blend out. And then I'll work on the rest of this particular apple to see if there's any other areas that I need. Like I know I need to take some attention or pay some attention to the edge of it because it doesn't look like it's fully rendered to me. So I'm just making sure that those edges are fully done and that I can't see my pencil mark through them. And of course you can, you know, fiddle with it as much as you want to if you wanted to add any additional marks. So I'm going to go ahead and move to this one. So I've got yellow and white on my brush, just kind of telling myself where I want that highlight to be right there, and maybe I'll have another one over in through this direction. I'm going to amp these up. I feel like I'm going to amp them up in a after I get this finished kind of look to it, but right now, again, just kind of setting them in motion, maybe a little bit more red on this one, especially over on this edge over here. And again, you can have yours really light or really dark, whatever works for you. If you want it to, I think I'm actually going to put a little lightness over on this edge over here, so yellow and white right on top of that red to help identify that edge a little bit better. There we go, that works for me. And then this edge looks pretty good, maybe just a little bit more red over in through here, and you just keep fiddling with it again until you've got that look that you want. You know, you can have them super smooth, you can have them really, you know, bold and vibrant. It's, you know, totally up to you. Yellow and white. I'm gonna go over here to this one over here, so yellow and white. And you know, I like to work with a dirty brush, so I keep, you know, I don't wash it very often, but I definitely wipe it off on my paper towel a lot. So you might find that if your colors intermingle too much for your liking, that you'll probably, you know, you could certainly wash and dry your brush more frequently than I do, but I definitely like to work with my dirty brush. But again, I'm kind of utilizing the same process through each one of these. I'm just building my way, or, you know, deciding where I want that highlight to be, and then making sure the rest of the apple is fully rendered. So I feel like I want to add a little bit more down here, maybe a little bit more red in through this center area. So I just kind of picked up a tiny bit of red to get these to really talk together. And you know, you can keep a little of the lightness at the bottom of it. You can really have fun and just play with it again until it feels as you know, fully finished as you want it to feel. And then I got these couple right in through here. So yellow and white again is where I start. Put in maybe a little bit more white so we can see it just a bit more, and then just kind of blending this out and getting it to make sure that it works with the rest of the apple in through here. I think I'm going to pick up a little bit more yellow and white to get this left side to be a bit more vibrant or have a little bit more fullness to it. So maybe this one looks like it's sticking out a bit more from the rest of the bunch. And then just making sure these edges are nice and finished. So sometimes the pencil can be a little bit difficult to cover. So if you find that you're struggling with covering some of your pencil, you can certainly use a little bit of white. Will help you to, if you put a layer of white, let it dry for a minute, and then come back on top of it with your color. That will help you to cover that pencil. And then I think that's looking pretty good. Maybe I'm going picking up a little bit of brown. Sorry, I want this to be a little bit darker in through here, so I just picked up a little bit of brown on that one. Now I'm going to go finish this one over here. So yellow and white. I'm going to have my highlight somewhere in through here, and then it's going to kind of just trail down And again, the highlights don't have to have a perfect system to them. I'm really just looking to tell the viewer that part of this apple is in fact shiny and it's sticking out and it's catching some of the light that surrounds it in the atmosphere. So you can really put the little reflective highlights wherever you want. You can even, you know, bring some over onto the edges if your apple isn't sticking out or, you know, popping out of your canvas enough. Maybe you can just add a little bit of extra lightness over on the edge where it's meeting that background, and that's going to help it pop out a little bit more. And then I'm just going to make sure that I've got this whole apple fully done here, and then I'm just going to really pop through real quick and do a white spot in my highlight, that brightest spot on the highlight. So that will put that final little amp of shine on it. So I'm thinking this is looking pretty good, making sure that I've got that whole apple colored in nice, and just going to wash and dry my brush real quick and pop on a little vibrant twinkle in these spots that I've already designated as my bright spots. So I didn't do this initially because sometimes I tend to go overboard. So what I was just kind of planning them out initially, and now I'm just kind of going back and saying, okay, here's definitely the brightest of the bright spots, and that helps kind of control me. Otherwise I'll have, you know, these big huge areas that I just blend out, and if I can build it in layers like this, it really just helps for my brain to work a little bit more properly and get it to look a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to put a little bit right in through here, and that's all I'm going to do for my highlights. I am going to be using my small brush for the next step. So when you've got your highlights done and your apples are all nice and crispy looking, you can put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing for the next step is I'm painting my whiskers and my stems. So I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to be using white, black, brown, and I think that's it, white, black, and brown. So I'm going to start with my whiskers. I'm going to be using just white paint, and the trick for this is I have a lot of paint on my brush. I'm trying to keep my brush pretty pointy. You can also use a touch of water on your brush, and I try and swipe it pretty darn quick. So I've got my whiskers kind of coming out in this direction. So I'm going to just kind of swipe it really quick. I don't really need too many. I'm just kind of doing a couple, so it, you know, speaks to the authenticity of our little guy in through here. Maybe a long one, and they don't have to come out all in the same direction either. So feel free to explore different directions when it comes to doing your whiskers. And I'm not putting any on the left because I'm feeling like they are hiding behind the barrel on the left-hand side. So that's going to be my whiskers. I'm going to wash and dry my brush real quick. I'm going to put some black and brown on my brush to do my stems. So my stems are going to be of various lengths, and they're going to curve a little bit. So I've got this one kind of coming out like this, and you can put a little bump on the edge, on the tip of them if you want to, and you can have them in any area. So I'm going to have this one kind of back in through here. This one's going to be just, you know, hiding along the side, and again just black and brown. This one's you're not going to be able to see it. This one I'm going to have kind of coming out here and leaning over the side with a little bump on it. This one is going to be coming out from here and just kind of sticking up here with a little bump on the tip, and they can again be all different kinds of lengths. I'm going to come out from the center of this one and just bring this one out in through there. Maybe that one needs to be a little wider, something like that. And then this one I'm going to have coming out of here. Oops, my brush just got away from me there. So let me just kind of correct that. Make my little bump on the edge. And then I have one more I've got right in through here. So I think this one I'm going to have come in this direction with my little bump on the end. And then I'm going to just put a tiny highlight. So without washing my brush, I picked up a little bit of white paint, white and brown I'm going to use for my highlight, and I'm just going to give a little kind of swipe on my stem so it doesn't look two-dimensional. Just giving a little tiny highlight so it looks like we've got some kind of shape or dimension to it. And again, I'm using white and brown on my brush at the same time, which provides me with some nice, easy way to add a little bit of dimension to it. And then I'm going to be using my large brush for the next step. So once you've got your stems down, and you can, of course, manipulate your apples any which way if you need to along the edges, you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting some grass right down in front of our barrel and our apples. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are black, green, yellow, and white. And how I'm going to first start this is with a little bit of black and green on my brush at the same time. I don't need a lot. What I'm in essence going to do is I'm going to take and bring a couple of little pieces up in front of my barrel down at the bottom. And the reason why I'm using black to start this process is I want you to be able to see the little silhouette of some of these pieces of grass. And I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, so this way I'm able to get these little individual kind of pieces just sticking up. I'm using the corner of my brush. You can even put some in front of your apples a little bit. And I'm not making it too long. I don't want this grass to look so terribly out of control, but this at least gives me the illusion of it, just kind of these apples are out in the field somewhere being harvested. So now that I've got the illusion of the silhouetted kind of pieces, I'm going to start picking up green. I didn't wash my brush. Yellow and a touch of white. And what I'm going to do is, with a very minimal amount of paint and effort, I'm just going to give myself these tiny little pops of pieces of grass. So again, you don't have to do much. If every time you go to pick up more paint, maybe the next time you pick up a little bit more yellow, maybe the next time you pick up a little bit more white, and just kind of giving yourself this textured look to the ground is going to bring this into focus right at the bottom of those apples. So this really just kind of, again, steers the viewer into looking in this area, because we've brought this into focus by putting these little kind of tips of the grass in through here. And if you're going about and you're like, oh my God, I did way too much, just let it dry and then back it off. You can put a little bit of the green back, bring back a little bit of the black, whatever, again, visually works for you. Just have fun with it. It doesn't need to be anything perfect. We're just kind of steering the viewer to understand that these in fact are, just nestled and falling out of the barrel into the grass below. And then we are going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your grass all nice and represented in through here, you can put this large brush away wherever you'd like to. Take out your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going bottom left on this one. Small brush, black paint. I sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful, vibrant, crisp apple painting, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.